Hi everyone, this is Mirko from the World of Practice, and we're here for our the Expert 10 Minutes series. Today we'll be actually talking about the topic of reshoring and nearshoring, and I'm very pleased to have here with me Tim Richardson, the Managing Director at Iter Consulting. So Tim, welcome, and
Thank you, Mirko.
perhaps you can quickly introduce yourself to our friends.
Yeah, no problems. So, as Tim Richardson, I was the founder of a business called Iter Consulting. We're a supply chain operational excellence consultancy working across kind of manufacturing businesses, dominantly UK based, but working globally. And I would say probably our DNA, if you like, is that we're all kind of bald or grey like myself, so bring lots of experience. So it's kind of real world solution, usually to quite complex, multi-dimensional supply chain issues. So that's how I would describe what we are.
Great. And Tim, I mean, the reason why I thought about having this conversation with you is because you and I, we discussed a lot, especially during the pandemic period, various pandemic period, and we're hearing a lot about have supply chains become too lean, and do we need to bring manufacturing back to closer to home countries or destination markets? So basically, because of that, I thought, let's have a conversation. Maybe let's share some of our insights and thinking with our friends. So let's get started then on this topic. And I think first things first. So let's get the basics straight. I mean, can you just explain what is the difference between reshoring and nearshoring?
Okay, well, reshoring is, in my world, reshoring is bringing it right back into kind of very close to your market, whereas nearshoring is, in most global organizations we kind of deal with, is bringing it into region. So somewhere supporting the Americas, somewhere supporting Asia, somewhere supporting Europe, might be multiple sites within each of those, but basically it's a strategy that's designed around regions rather than actually serving a specific marketplace, and that can be a mix of manufacturing and or distribution. But I think the real challenges come in the sort of the manufacturing and the supply chain rather than the logistics of moving things around, with the exception of not being able to get through the Red Sea and so on and so forth at the moment.
Yeah, that is a different story.
That kind of distorts it somewhat, but I think as the fundamental business principles going forward, I think it is about the ability to support your markets in a more regional way.
But the example you just gave about the Red Sea issues, I mean, it's actually very, very relevant because as a matter of fact, I mean, that is one of the example circumstances where governments, for example, might get simply speaking, consumers might get a little bit worried because they don't get their products right on time, and there might be many logistics issues or many issues along the way for a long journey. So in light of that, I was thinking, really, during COVID-19 or after the pandemic itself, many companies started to consider these strategies more seriously than before, because before it was all about, optimizing, getting
lowest cost
as well. Yeah, exactly. So what do you think motivated many companies to do that? And also, did that eventually really happen, or it was more a temporarily panic mode?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair comment. Although I think that's, I'm certainly seeing certain organisations starting to take a more strategic view around nearshoring and reshoring. But I think there's lots of. It's very easy to see it in simple terms, like we'll build factories in each of the places, but certain parts of demand, it doesn't justify making it in multiple locations, and so therefore how you segment your demand and where you build the capability and what capability is really key. And I think one of the questions that really seem to get asked quite often is, what's the purpose? What are we really trying to do? Is it about cost? Is it about speed to marketplace? Is it about, is it about security? Because clearly, the thing about, I guess, geopolitical risks, some are identifiable, others are not, or not so easy. The ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. I mean, those kind of things, yes, they can happen, but those scenarios are very difficult to deal with. But I think having a clarity about what the key risks are and how you're going to mitigate those both in the short and long term is kind of really key as we move forward.
And yet, I mean, it is interesting because I think, on one side, clearly, I mean, that's about mitigating those risks, but and therefore, to an extent, enhancing supply chain resilience and responsiveness. But on the other end, it is also true that, I mean, from a pure cost perspective, especially in those industries where margins tend to be pretty shrunk, it's not always a viable option, is it?
No, I think that's probably true. In which case, I would say you probably need to be looking at low cost sourcing. But I think even there, you don't have it in one country. Even if you're saying it's all going to be Asia centric, I think you also need to look at the total cost to serve. The fact that you are, in terms of, you've got an extended lead time, so therefore you've got to hold more inventory, you carry more inventory risk, you're not able to respond in quite the same way as you can from a more local manufacturer. So again, it's how you split. In some lower margin businesses, the bulk is done in low cost environments and it moves in a very predictive way, but the bits of the volatility that you have to deal with elsewhere, maybe those are the things that you hold contingency stocks, or you have a higher cost, lower volume, but much more responsive manufacturing capability closer to the individual market. So I think I think the strategies to do it effectively get quite complex quite quickly. So being clear why you're doing it is really key. I think the other thing is you're going to look at is how is it practically deliverable. I think part of the business goes round in cycles, and I think we're in a cycle now where resilience is, in most markets, kind of probably balancing cost better than it has done in the past. But I think the technology, the planning technologies, integrated supply chain planning technologies that now exist do allow you to plan, manage and control a much more complex supply chain than has historically been the case. So it's building a capability within the organization as well to effectively manage that.
While you were speaking, there's one thing that came to my mind. You were talking about greater responsiveness and maybe doing the bulk, let's say lower cost location, etc. I mean, to an extent, when we think about strategies such as, late stage postponement, that could be considered to a great extent, perhaps a subset. I mean, it's part of the reshoring, nearshoring family, isn't it?
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I think there's two bits of that. Sometimes, yes, that makes a good strategy because it's the complexity of value add in the late point configuration is actually quite small. But sometimes I think there's also certainly more engineered products. Lots of them are not designed necessarily for that to be a very viable option, and so you're almost into a generational type kind of design issue. You've got to design for late point configuration to enable that to happen. But certainly, if the bulk of the cost can be set in the core product, and then the relatively low skilled, quite often in a higher cost economy, will actually mitigate some of your working capital implications and give you the responsiveness. So I think that's a totally viable strategy. Okay,
so Tim, I think we kind of started off by covering the basics here, and in next session we'll be talking more about challenges, success stories. But for now, thank you so much.